Welcome to another episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Rod McCall.
And I'm Bryce Runge.
And today we have a special treat with us today. Whenever you're looking for dirt on somebody, it's always good to go to their mom. And so today we have Sharon Runge with us today. She is here visiting from California. And so Bryce and I persuaded her to be on our podcast today.
Yay! Sorry, we don't have any funds to pay you.
Anyway, so without further ado, I'm going to kind of pass this over to Bryce and let him kind of get us started today.
Yeah, so hi, Mom.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm fine. We thought it would be interesting and a special treat, not only for us, but our listeners to have you on the podcast. I like what Rod used when we were formulating these questions and what are we going to ask you, this transgenerational thing. You are living in your golden years.
Thank you.
Yes, I had to correct myself earlier, so we'll keep it at that. But you've been through quite a bit. In fact, I've shared some of your story in my new book, and there's stuff that a lot of people don't know. I do feel like you are an open book, though. I know you like to share your stories. But we wanted to bring you on to talk about that transgenerational thing, like you're a product of a divorced family, right? You also have parents who died by suicide.
Yes.
You went through my divorce.
Oh, yes.
You went through Brad's divorce recently.
Oh, yes.
So you've experienced quite a bit, and I didn't even mention raising 4 hellions. I wasn't part of that. Oh, yes, I was.
I was going to say, read your damn book. And I met Brother Brad.
Yeah, he's a wild child.
He is, that was, yes, your 40th birthday party was one heck of a soiree.
So, that's right.
Yeah, that was fun.
That's right.
That was fun. But anyways, so yeah, that's why we thought it would be an awesome idea to have you on. But anyways, if you would give us a little backstory, tell us where you were born and raised. So yeah, take it from there.
I was born in Chicago, Illinois, a few years ago.
Yeah.
and actually raised in Park Ridge, Illinois. And when I was probably in kindergarten or first grade is when my parents got divorced.
Okay.
And my mother moved out to California with the 4 of us. Her parents had moved to California, and my mother's parents moved to California. And so we stayed at my grandmother's house until my dad and an uncle, I believe it was, brought a brand new, one of the newest long trailers out to California for us to live in.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Had 2 doors, one in the front and one in the back.
This is the trailer in Pasadena, right?
This is in Pasadena, California.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm. And we were just kids, my mother had a job and we were kind of on our own.
Right.
I had an older brother, Terry, and 2 younger siblings, 5 years younger than myself, Kathy and Tim, twins. And we went to school there. And, you remember weird things in your life. I remember I had pink eye one time, couldn't go to school. And I remember sitting up in a tree with a box of Jell-O and sticking my finger in my mouth and then in the Jell-O, and I was on my own for the day.
Fend for yourself, kid.
Yeah, right.
Far cry from today.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of fend for yourself, you've told me this story before. I just think it's crazy that your mom put you and Terry
mm-hmm.
on a Greyhound when you were how old?
Let me think. 5, 4, 3, 2, 5, maybe 7. 7 years old.
So at 7 years old, your mom put you and Terry on a Greyhound bus, just the two of you.
Yes.
And sent you to Chicago.
Yes. My dad still lived in Chicago. Well, he lived in Park Ridge, and a suburb of Chicago. And so for the summer, yes, Terry and I were put on a Greyhound bus and had a little money. And it was interesting because everybody on the bus kind of took care of us. And I always wound up at the other end with more money than I started with.
Smart.
I remember, it must have been Utah. The one thing I remember, they had a slot machine outside of this restaurant that we went into. And the only other thing I remember is that the sidewalk was all glittery. Like it had, I don't know, it was, the cement had something in it to make it glittery. You know, the weird things that you remember. But yeah, we did that, and we spent probably a few weeks or a month with my dad in the summer.
Yeah.
And then my dad put us back on a bus and sent us back to California.
That's freaking wild.
But we're talking what? Late 60s, early 70s?
Of course, Rod.
Okay.
Go back.
Well, I say that because if you think about the state of the world, the people that rode on buses, it's a lot different than it is today.
Oh.
My parents put me on a bus to go see my grandparents, and I was maybe 10, 11, and they didn't think too much about it. But I remember, yes, the older people on the bus made sure the bus driver looked out for me. And so therefore, you know, and now granted, you were going halfway across the country. I only went a couple 100 miles, but still, you know, you stayed on the bus, you had lunch, you know, you had food provided, you had a toilet, but people did look out for you, and that kind of was nice.
Right. And you had a pillow, and you slept on the bus. We didn't go to a motel or anything. You stayed on the bus the whole time. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner at a restaurant.
Yeah. I get a kick out of that story, and I wanted you to touch on that. Just in my opinion, I think that's bizarre. Like, I couldn't imagine putting my kid. Now, I get it. Times are different. But
it teaches you, or for me anyway, it helped teach me a little bit of independence, how to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we were kids. What did we know? We didn't know anything. We just did what we were told to do.
Right.
Didn't think about it.
Yeah. That wild. So by the time you reached a senior, I know you ended up in Hampshire, where you fortunately met
your father.
Fortunately or unfortunately? No. God bless him. Where you had your senior year.
Yes.
So by the time you got to Hampshire, how many schools?
Where's Hampshire?
It's 40 miles west of Chicago.
Oh, so you've moved back to Illinois from California.
Oh, yes. What happened was my mother had a boyfriend, and she wanted to get married. And so my brother Terry and I went to live with my dad and his new wife. Let me think about that. The end of my 5th grade.
Can I just say something? So my mom's so her name is Eleanor. And then my mom's dad decides to remarry, and he remarries an Eleanor. I think that's either crazy or really smart. You don't get it mixed up.
I would say it's really smart.
Eleanor number 1 and Eleanor number 2.
At that point, it doesn't matter. I mean, personally, I'd rather be 1 than 2. You know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wanted to point that out.
That's too funny. Yeah. So anyhow, we went back to live with my dad and Eleanor number 2, and she had a baby girl, and her mother lived with us. My step grandmother and I shared a room, And then we moved back to Park Ridge, where it all started. My dad owned gas stations, and he owned one in Park Ridge. And then they wound up having another girl. So they had two girls, Susan and Linda. And my twin brother and sister stayed in California with my mother. So we didn't see each other for a long time. It was different times then. We didn't call. We didn't have 800 numbers that you could call for free.
Long distance was extremely expensive.
Well, yeah. I don't think we even had it, to tell you the truth. We wrote letters, which would be a nice thing to do now.
True. Very nice.
Get back to writing letters, thank you notes, those kinds of things, you know. But, so we lived with my dad and my stepmother, and they moved a lot. You asked me the question before. I think in 12 years of school, I might have been changed 12 times.
That's a lot.
About 12 times. I'm a very sort of backward kind of person, back behind the scenes. And I hated it. I hated going to a new school every time. You're the center of attraction because you're the new kid, you know.
Mm-hmm, right.
I never liked that at all. My dad bought a Studebaker garage in Denton, Texas.
Isn't that wild?
Really?
He did.
Was Denton like 30 miles from here?
Yeah, sure. Something like that.
Yeah.
I was in 8th grade. 7th grade, 8th grade school. And we moved to Texas, lock, stock, and barrel. At least I think he bought a brand new house. When the realtor opened the garage door, there was a huge tarantula on the back of that wall.
Welcome to Texas.
One of those things, you know. And my stepmother almost stepped on scorpions were in the house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Susan, the first little girl, she was a little gal in a high chair. And it didn't last very long. I don't know what happened. I was a kid. I didn't know what happened. But we sort of left during the night. And I had this basket. It was a blue oval metal basket, and it had yellow daffodils on it with little handles. And I wanted to go back to that school to get my stuff out of my locker, and they wouldn't let me do it. And so...
Sounds like a bad deal going wrong, right?
We stayed...
Well, you know, Studebaker, they went out of business, so maybe it had something to do with that.
I don't know, but we stayed with a different family. He was called Doc Maddox, I think his name was. Had a huge acre farm, I guess. And we tarried back to Illinois, and I was able to go back to finish 8th grade at the same school. And you'll find this interesting because this would not happen today. My parents found an apartment, and one of my teachers passed by that apartment on his way to school, and I was his passenger. He would pick me up, take me to school, and bring me back home every day until school was over.
Yeah, it's frowned upon these days.
Yeah.
Well, at least male, female. Right.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen, yeah.
No.
Yep. So I got to finish 8th grade. Then I went to high school in Arlington Heights, my freshman year. And in between 8th grade and my freshman year, I worked in a bakery. Don't remember how much I got paid, probably 5 cents an hour. And then my parents decided, they decided to move to Palatine. So that put me into Palatine High School. The bakery had another bakery on the corner across from the high school, so I worked there after school. We could eat as much as we wanted while we were there. So one day I ate a whole custard pie.
Cool.
I'd have to work on Saturdays, and I'd go early in the morning, and the baker and I would have breakfast, and we'd put eggs in a pie tin and have it on the rack that would go around like a merry or a Ferris wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd baste the eggs when they'd come around, and then beautiful pastry, and you stick your hand in this huge bucket of icing and drizzle it all over. Yum, yum, yum.
I'm getting hungry.
I'm getting hungry. I just ate, but I'm hungry again.
Yeah. So I went to Palatine High School for my sophomore and junior year, and then they decided to move again. And we moved to Hampshire, Illinois, my senior year. Best year ever.
At least you finished strong. Finished on a good note.
Yeah. I didn't like school. And so I had a fun year. I was the new girl in town, and I got to be a cheerleader, and I hated for that year to end. That was my best year.
So Dad had already graduated, correct?
Yes.
So you were a year behind him.
Uh-huh.
So my dad was a farmer. He was a dairy farmer.
Mm-hmm. Dairy and crop.
Dairy and crop. He and his dad, they owned most of Hampshire. No,
Not really.
they owned a significant part of that. Heck, we even have a name, a street named after us. It's Runge. Was it Runge Way or Runge Avenue?
Runge Street?
Runge.
I'm surprised I don't see a road sign somewhere in your house.
You know, when we've gone back, we go back every summer except for last summer. Well, this summer too. Brad climbed up on the shocker. Right?
Yeah.
Brad climbed up on the street sign trying to yank it down, and it wouldn't come down. He's like, damn it, I want it. Well, okay. Anyways.
Like they won't know who took it?
Right. Runge boys must be in town.
Shut and lock the doors, keep your girls inside.
Yeah. So you graduate, and then you meet Dad, and then you guys end up getting married.
Mm-hmm.
You had Brian, my oldest brother,
Mm-hmm.
and then you moved to California when he was 2, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
2.5, yes.
So I want to ask how, if you could answer it, how do you think, you know what Rod was talking about, our experiences shape who we are, right? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that we are the sum of all of our experiences, good, bad, however. So I guess what we're trying to get at is, how did your experiences growing up, being from divorced parents, moving a lot, how did that shape how you chose to raise your family?
Wow. I don't know how to answer that. Well, number one, I would never have expected my kids to get divorced, which is sad. It was very sad to me. And then Brad was very sad. And I don't know. I think it just all came natural. You just roll with the punches and have certain expectations of your spouse, your kids, whatever. And you have high hopes that you're going to do the right thing, and that I just really never thought about it. I just did what I did.
Yeah. Well, speaking of expectations, we've talked about this. It's a funny thing, right? You end up disappointed quite a bit. What were your expectations for the family?
Well, I just hoped that I would have, well, number one, I felt that God wanted me to have 4 kids. I'm not sure why, but we were lucky, had 4 healthy kids. The last one was supposed to be a girl.
That would be me.
Well, we could alter a few things.
Well,
it's supposed to be Brenda.
Yes, and actually, my girlfriend gave me a baby shower, and it was all a girl. They were all convinced that my last one was going to be a girl. But thank goodness he was a healthy little baby boy. 9 pounds, 1 ounce.
Yeah, it's hefty.
And nothing's changed.
And I guess I really never expected anything. You just do what you do and live life and try to be a good person and try to raise your kids. You've never done this before, so it's a new path for you.
Did it get easier as you had more boys?
Easier for general things because you've done it before.
Like changing diapers and feeding and stuff like that.
Feeding, going along, and then you've got all the other things, the sports, and it was fun going to their games and all of that. You have to, and try to be fair to each one. Going to practice, going to games.
But it's common knowledge. The baby always gets the most.
My brother Brad's a favorite.
Really?
Oh, yeah, they do that back and forth all the time.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you better go be by your favorite mom. Brad, you better go be by your favorite mom.
Would you say that moving around as much as you did encouraged you to pick a home and stay at a single location? Or were you okay going, well, you know what? I moved around a lot, so it's fine to have the kids move around a lot.
I think that was a huge thing, probably subconsciously. That's why we haven't.
That's why it's so hard for you to move.
Yeah, because I hated it. Basically, one of my friends, Wendy, who lives up the street from us, she just went out to dinner with her kindergarten friends. And you think about it, I have no friends from my past as a child. I don't, I wouldn't know any of them except for my senior year. My classmates call me, a couple of them call me, and we keep in touch all the time via text or. So that's been important to me. It feels good to have somebody care about you and keep in contact with you. But we just did what we did. And you don't think about it until later years. You think about things,
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about it until a lot later years that I think what's been the best thing for me is that I've had angels that have been guiding me, protecting me, whatever, in many different ways.
Yeah, of course.
Many different ways, yeah.
I believe it. So I want to skip to raising us, and I make light of it in my book. Which was your hardest, most challenging job. And I know we weren't easy, especially as we got older. And now having kids myself.
That's your punishment.
Yeah. You want what's best for them, right? And so let's talk about the things you believe worked when raising us. What do you think worked for when you raised the four of us?
And it's okay to say that you pulled out the belt and whipped his butt. I mean,
so that happened daily. As soon as my dad crossed over the threshold, the belt was already off. Dude.
Yeah, they got spankings. They got scolded. They got grounded. I think I was very protective. Maybe too protective. I don't know. I don't know how
what do you mean
feel.
by that?
I wanted to know where they were all the time. If they were playing out in front, which usually they had to be, because they were little. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about, they knew that when the street lights came on, they needed to be in the house when they were old enough to be out on their own. But I think I was very protective. They had friends. They had a lot of friends and everything. We would walk them to school. There was a certain amount of fear, I think, in that. I don't know why, but
I think as a parent, you have that. It's just like a natural thing. When Braddock's is gone, it's like, okay, it's gotten better over the years. Just because I trust and I believe that he's okay, or this is going to work out. You know, I don't really worry or concern if he goes to a friend's to go swimming or whatever as much. But I think it's kind of a natural thing. But anyways, so in regards to that, like with raising us, do you think the discipline worked? I'm going to answer that and say no.
Well, I think it is. Parents raise children differently, I think, today.
Yes, definitely.
And I think it is because, well, Bryce and I, we're the age now where we're raising our own kids, and we're thinking, I'm referring back to when, again, because my parents did the same thing. We had a board that hung in the kitchen that I don't know. It was a 1 by anyway. It was a little board with a nice curved handle, and it had Mother's Helper painted on there. And again, it hung in the kitchen dining room wall for all to see. And it provided a reminder to me. I don't know how it worked on my sisters, but you knew that if you went overboard, there was to be a consequence. Mm-hmm. And I think that I don't know, I sometimes wonder if today is, now that we're the parents' age, we're looking back and go, man, I didn't like getting spanked. Mm-hmm. But then I keep thinking about, okay, what was the most effective tool in reminding me that my parents' policies, my parents' rules, their requests, their demands had a purpose, and you move away from that, well, you can scold me. You can put me into timeout. You can ground me to my room. Mm-hmm. I mean, I used to go out and, break their rules, and they would ground me. Well, but then they would let me go over to my oldest sister's house. And so I would ride my bike over there, and then I would hang out there all night. Her husband had a part-time job in the evenings as a tow truck driver, so I go out with him on tow truck, rescues.
Right.
If this is what grounded is like, then
dang, this is really great being grounded. So sometimes the consequences have to be severe enough to help provide that attitude readjustment. Now, I'm not, advocating or encouraging, beating a kid.
We don't want to have to spank. We don't want to. We want you to do what we ask you to do. I mean, it's pretty simple, but kids are kids, and
is it our job to push the envelope to see just exactly where you're, just how serious you are?
That's your nature.
And as with 4 boys, I bet, especially Bryce, being the youngest, I bet he got away with a lot more stuff than Brett did, or Brian.
Actually, he probably in the boys' eyes he did. Mm-hmm. The other boys' eyes he maybe
They gave up on me. But screw it.
Well, in today's style of living, there's many parents, I think, that want to be buddies with their kids instead of be parents to their kids and guide them down the lines instead. It's fine to be best friends with your mother or your father when you're an adult. But when you're a child, there's certain rules you have to follow. If you break them, there's a consequences,
Gee, have we heard that before?
Heard that. I was just thinking, and Nicole took us down that path. Yeah,
she's a professional counselor, and we interviewed her, and that's kind of what she said as well.
Doesn't always mean a spanking. I don't know that I spanked that much.
Okay, let me just fill in that for you. Okay, you broke a lot of wooden spoons on
You got a hard butt.
and that was on our hands, and
And they would laugh.
we had to go get little branches, switches off of the tree in the backyard, okay, because that ended up across our rear end. So, hey, just because we're recording, don't try and sugarcoat this, okay? Let's just be truthful about what we're talking about here. I got my ass beat.
Well, I'm sure it was well deserved.
Yeah, it was. I was a handful.
All I had to do with him, Rod, was say, okay, go to your room. Oh, that would break his heart. He did not like being sent to his room. And that's all I'd have to say to him. Not the other ones, but him.
What's funny is that Suzanne, I know that she's somewhat incapacitated with her recent C-section, and Briar, she's a little rocket, man. She's all over the place, and she'll Bryce. I'm gonna call your dad, and I'm always reminded, and it somewhat rubs me the wrong way, and I look at her and I'm like, if your mom calls me one more time, I am open up a can of, no, okay, I'm not gonna do that to a 2-year-old. Anyways, so my mom, when we would act up, I'm going to call your father. So she would get on the phone with him while he was working. And I know that pissed him off. So by the time he got home,
he'd worked himself up pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And he'd walk over the threshold and, hi, Dad.
Yeah, right.
Hi, boys.
Yeah, right. So I wanted to touch on that because it was something that we wanted to address in terms of curbing that bad behavior. I know we've been talking a little bit about it. But yeah, that was something you did. I'm going to call your dad.
Right. I don't remember doing that often, though. I really don't.
Well, I remember it quite a bit.
You know, I find that interesting. My mother would do the same thing. She would say, well, rather than call.
Wait till your father gets home.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that too. We heard that.
That was very mortifying. And because when Dad would come home, you knew that there was going to be, well, it wasn't going to just be a stern talking to. There was going to be some kind of swat on the butt, and well, Dad can put a little more mustard on it than Mom could.
Right.
But you know what you were just saying about when Suzanne will say, well, I'm going to call your father down. How does that make you feel? I mean, I know as a kid, I had a very healthy respect for that statement. And I was fearful.
Right.
But I don't know that I ever was afraid of my dad. I just knew that, okay, I crossed the line.
You were afraid
but
of
you as a parent, hearing those words, how does that make you feel?
So this has only been recently because Briar's old enough to kind of understand that. And I love my dad, but it takes me to that place. When I hear that and I like had a flashback, and nothing that you did anything wrong, but I would remember what I received from your phone call. And I have to fight against that because I could easily go downstairs and act like my dad, but I have to fight against that. So I'm going to go downstairs.
So
I'm going to come out of the office and I'm going to, Briar, what are we doing? Do you need to go to time? You know, I'm going to have a conversation. Rarely do I have to, discipline her in that way. But yeah, it's an automatic. Like I go there, I know what it's like. For Dad to be summoned, if you will, and but I have a different charge, if you will. Like I'm creating. We talked about this legacy, right? I'm not gonna be that dad again. I love Dad, and I know he didn't handle things appropriately a lot, and I'm not throwing stones. But again, I could quickly reflect on that and I could apply a new method, if you will.
Because you learned from what you went through.
Yeah.
And we didn't have time out. We didn't have, There's rules and they're meant to be followed, and if you didn't, you paid a price. In today's world, a spanking would put you in jail.
And it's very interesting. I was reading a quote from Cicero, and we're talking a couple hundred years BC, in which he was commenting on the poor behavior of children today. And it just made me chuckle that for, I don't know, a couple thousand years, we have been commenting on the poor behavior of children today. So it makes me chuckle because I've heard it said, I've said it myself, but to read a Roman historian from over 2,000 years ago comment about the poor behavior of children today, they are so undisciplined, made me kind of take a bit of a step back. We didn't call a timeout, but I would get grounded to my room. You need to go to your room and you need to think about what you've just done or what you've just said. To me, that's a timeout. Right. And I think that one of the things that my parents did was I don't know that, again, my parents, they didn't go to college. They were happy to graduate high school. And again, they grew up my dad was born in 35, my mom was born in 39. And so but they would say, you go to your room. I don't want to talk to you right now. I just want you to go reflect. Well, I've learned since that was more for them than it was for me, because they did not want to respond to our bad behavior with a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
And so when we would get a spanking, it was usually a bare hand. I know my dad would threaten with the belt, but it never actually happened. And even though we had that mother's helper, I never saw it. They never used it, but perception. The perception was there that don't cross the line too far.
Daily reminder.
But I think that one of the things that my parents did, and again, we're talking about back in the 70s, but they would explain after they had calmed down, after a gap of time, and they would say, look, this is what you did. This is why I didn't like what you did. And this is what could have happened and what we don't want to happen. And and so we're going to give you a spanking or a discipline consequence. But it was never done out of anger or hostility or emotion at that time.
What about this hurts me more than it hurts you?
Well,
have you heard that?
Oh, yeah.
And actually, when I would discipline Eric, I better understood that. And a lot of times when he would get a discipline or a consequence, it would be, I better understood what my parents had done. And so I applied that. Go and you go to your room. And he would slam his door. And he'd want to come out, and I go, well, has your attitude changed? No. Okay, then go back in your room. And that's how, we would deal with it. When he was younger, around, 3 or 4, a lot of times if he was throwing toys or something like that, I go, well, the toy needs to go to timeout. The toy is acting bad. And so, as I'm taking my classes to become a professional counselor, these are some of the things that keep coming up of what to do. And I applaud my parents for this. And I think that a lot of parents today, even though they may not use a spanking, which may or may not be a good thing, I think there is a decent amount of explaining. And I see that with the kids that we teach.
Right.
Because when I visit with them, give them a chance to cool off, give me a chance to cool off, we can communicate a little bit better rather than, I'm angry at you, you're angry at me, so our engagement is out of anger.
Right. Instead of logic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And kids can drive you through the wall.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's...
Oh, yeah, quite a bit. So we're nearing the end of our episode. And I think we've kind of addressed most of the questions.
Let's hit that last. One of the things that is a common point of contention in families focuses on finances, jobs, for you, for mom, for dad, for kids. What to do, what do you do after high school? When do you start dating? When do you get them a car? How did you guys, Mr. Runge, address these kind of issues with the boys?
That's a good question.
Wow. Yeah. I think through life we wanted them to grow up and be responsible, expect them to get a job, be responsible people. We went to church as a family every Sunday. We didn't send them to church. We went as a family and wanted them to go through the process of life. Each one has their own individual personality, their own intelligence. Everybody has something. And so needing to find out what their something would be, I think we probably had hopes that, get them through school and out of high school and out of high
Out of the
school.
house.
And I think probably in our mind we would expect them to go to college. Finances weren't where we could pay fully for them to go to college. I think Gordon gave them money for things. We weren't rich people at all. I worked my whole life doing this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
And our oldest one graduated from college. Our second one is more of an entrepreneurial person. Brett did go to college, though, come to think of it.
He did a little stint in a junior college.
He's an artist. And then there's Brad, graduated from college. Bryce graduated from college.
Twice.
That was a big
With a
surprise.
master's degree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that his dad was more lenient with him because of being the baby and allowed him to be a part of Brett's business. And he went inline skating all over the country.
Well, I was also a young adult, so.
And I don't think that was a good thing. I think that he probably should have gotten a job out of high school, maybe.
Yeah, so we were always, this is what I believed was that Dad was, you either get a job or you go to college. And, well, I wasn't going to college because it wasn't on my radar at that time, so it was all those jobs. But yeah, the skating part was, that was.
So I said to Bryce one day, I'm like, wow, do you know you're going to be a quarter of a century old? He looked at me, and the next thing I knew, he had enrolled in college.
Dang, I should have said that when he was 20. You know, you're 1/5 of a century old.
Yeah, shocked the heck out of me, and we're so proud of him. Look at where he's gotten, for crying out loud. And that's what every parent would want, was their kids to grow up, be healthy, follow the patterns of life of which, they would want to choose to do. Keep out of trouble. Don't go to jail, for health, for life.
Well, you 2 for 4 on that one.
And look at now, he's repeating life. He's got a family. They've all got families. They're growing their own children, and the pendulum swings back. Life repeats itself. So if you can do it better, good for you.
There you go. There you have it.
I don't know that I could sum it up any better.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you sharing a little bit of your story, a little bit of your wisdom. And I know there's lots more to talk about, but we can't cram that all in one episode. And I know you guys are probably leaving town soon. But anyways, Rod, do you have anything else that you want to?
I just want to say thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you.
I know we've talked on multiple occasions, but this has been very enjoyable. Boy, the way I got all kinds of fun dirt on Bryce.
I imagine.
That's why I won't bring my mother on. But it is, with the transgenerational society where we've kind of gone back almost 100 years in American history where you're having multiple generations in the same home. I know that my wife and I, we have her mother, we have her kids with us at different times. Mm-hmm. And, as parents, you want to do what's best for your kids. But there's no owner's manual that you get. You get the birth certificate at the hospital, but that's about all.
Actually, you don't even get that at the hospital anymore.
Oh, okay.
You got to pay for that at the local county.
Don't get me started on that. But it is, you always want. I've watched being with my wife and helping raise her children, how far they have come and where they are now. And you're going, I'm so glad, you did a lot of things I wished you hadn't done.
Right.
But I see how they have changed and shaped you, and look at the fine, upstanding mm-hmm. person you are becoming. Mm-hmm. And it is really nice. And so I guess when you're a parent, you worry about your kids. And as a kid, you worry, my parents are too strict, or my parents just don't understand.
Right.
I mean, Will Smith even wrote a song about it.
Yes.
But you're right. It comes full circle.
Yep.
And praise God.
Amen.
There we go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our episode for today.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mom. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.